So let's switch gears to the conversation of the day. And again, I mentioned today we are focusing on intermarriages and a special focus on interracial and intercultural marriages. Now, this is something that you actually suggested after we had such an amazing conversation about thriving marriages and how those who are in this institution are doing their best to ensure that marriage works in a life or in a world where most people view this institution from negative lenses. So today, let's look at the other aspect of it, intermarriages. So how do they work? How can we make it work despite the pressure from within and from without? To help us with this conversation, we have Cynthia Wambui-Otieno, who is a love, life and relationship coach. She's also an author and also a pastor. We are also joined by a couple, that is Duncan and Candy Juma in the other studio. They are from an intercultural marriage background. And later on, we'll also be joined by Liz and Solomon Ocampo, who have an interracial marriage. But before we get to that conversation, let's take a look at your thoughts in as far as intermarriages are concerned.
Moishapenda unaenda kwa mwenye umeshampenda, awe tribe ama si ya tribe yako, unamchukua, unamkubali kulingana na tribe yake.
Zamani pale kale watu walikuwa nao kutoka jamii yao, na hiyo ilikuwa wakati hizo, lakini nyakati hizi tunapatia vijana uhuru wa kuoa. Akipata mpenzi kutoka kabila fulani, akipata mpenzi kutoka kabila lile, akipata mpenzi kutoka dini lile, kama wazazi, kama mimi mzazi, nina support ile wito wake. Kama amempenda yule msichana, sina pingamizi yoyote, kwa sababu hii ni generation nyingine.
Marrying from another culture, it depends with how you relate with a lady and how you've been for so long, you know. Okay, I can't insist on marrying my own culture because I think love exists and it can come from any place. You can get love from maybe a Masai, Luya.
Ili swala la ndoa nadhani halina hiyo mambo ya ukabila. Waweza kutoka kabila yote. Wakati unao mpaka mtu ule umemzoea, yani unafanya mambo mengi naye. Sio tu kuangukia tu, lakini kwa kabila nyingine sio ni shida.
Well, interesting perspectives around intermarriages, interracial, intercultural marriages in this country. And let's understand from those that actually wear these shoes and understand how they pinch. Well, let me start off with Cynthia Wambui-Otieno. Going by your name, I will use the phrase we normally use around here. Your name betrays you. Clearly, you are coming from an intercultural marriage.
Yes.
How is that set up for you?
It's amazing. I think I was listening to the guy that just said that, you know, when you love, you love. And that's basically it. Mm-hmm. When you love, you do not think through different, you know, how different the person is. The truth is they are different. Mm-hmm. But when you love, you love.
All right. And when did this journey start for you?
For me, it's... I got married in 2009. We had only one date.
Oh.
And he asked me to marry him. We were abroad. We were living abroad at the time. And I had seen him. I had heard of him. And so we met at a conference, and I liked what I saw. I liked what I had heard about him. And at first, I didn't realize that he was Luo. Mm-hmm. You know, when you're living outside of the country, you don't ask those kind of questions. Yeah. So later on is when I got to realize, and then it was just right after the post-election violence. So I was a bit nervous about him being Otieno and I being Wambui. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, one of the things that I want to tell you, Gladys, is that we were very intentional, very intentional. Once we knew we had fallen in love, once we knew that we had the commonality of our faith, we sat down. And the critical part about our relationship is that we sat down and we discussed our differences. We discussed how different we are as a community. You know, my community is a strong community and they have strong beliefs about other other communities, and he comes from a different community that also has very strong beliefs and pretty strong. So we sat down, put it on a piece of paper, the differences, how we believe, why we believe what we believe, what are the significant differences that other people will want to put a say into it, Gladys. And let me tell you, that's what has saved our marriage.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay, and you'll give us more details
Yes.
about how you've been able to maneuver this. But even as we get into this conversation, what's the one thing you'd like everyone to keep in mind, considering that we come from a background where we have so many cultures represented
Yes.
in this country, but also we have more intermarriages happening today?
Now, let me tell you something, Gladys. I really love that you're having this topic this morning, because I'm a strong advocate of bringing everything to the surface. You see, it's very important that people talk first about the cross-cultural, intercultural, intertribal relationships. They're happening. They've been happening since time immemorial. What we need to do is bring those topics. So for the couples that are out there, is how are you addressing yourselves as a couple? Are you living under assumptions, or you actually have begun to embrace the difference that you have and bring it to the table and discuss it? Open communication. Be a people that celebrates the difference but holds it as your strength. Yeah, so that's one of the things that I would want to tell the couples out there.
All right, so let's get to it and listen in on another couple that is walking this journey of intercultural marriages, Duncan and Kendi Juma. So, where did this Lunje and this Meru meet?
Where did you meet? They say ladies first.
Yeah, let's start with Kendi.
Okay, thanks, Gladys. Juma and I met at work at a time when I didn't believe in office relationships. But I think God had his own plans, and yeah, we met and got married.
Okay, and how long ago did you meet?
We met in 2012. Then we dated for 2 years, and we got married in 2014.
Yes. All right, so Juma, what is this that you saw in Kendi that just got you taken?
Well, I was an MC at an office event.
Yes.
And I think she was being rewarded on one of those moments for top performers. And so being an MC means I saw her walk towards where I was to receive her award. And I was like, maybe if you need to have a stronger family, you need to have a strong performing mother. You know? But she was looking beautiful at that time. And I was like, maybe I should pursue her from that moment on. But I was almost exiting the company, so I was like, maybe the only reason I came to this company is to get a wife, so maybe I should pursue this one.
Okay, so how soon after you met did you get married?
I think it was 2 years later.
Yes.
Yeah, I would have wanted it to be immediate, but I think the intercultural bit, maybe.
Okay, yeah, let's bring in that aspect of it. Kendi,
Yes.
So you get to know this guy, understand that he's from the western side of his country. You clearly are from somewhere near the mountain. How was that an issue?
When we were dating, it wasn't an issue. I think we never had that card. We never played the cultural card at all. I think that also helped. Before we got married, we went for premarital classes, and that really helped us deal with our cultural issues a lot. Like put them on the table, address things that you think would come up, and it really helped us a lot.
Okay. Now,
Yes.
today I'd like you to be very candid and look back during that dating period.
Yes.
Some of the things that you saw about him, what he ate, what he thought about family, and you were wondering, guy, nitaweza kweli?
In fact, I should tell you a story. He always talks about it. You know, as you said, I come from the mountain side of the country.
Yes.
So us guys and ugali, it's out of question. I mean, we hardly used to have ugali at home. We have a lot of mukimo at home. So there's this time, I used to live with my sister. So he came and he had come to my house to visit. And we had a small packet of unga ugali. And it actually had gone bad. And he could not believe how unga ugali is going bad. Yet people are supposed to eat ugali, you know. And 7 years down the line, let's say we don't have mokimo, we do a lot of ugali in our house.
Oh, look at that. So, Juma, you go visiting this Meru girl and you see an expired packet of unga. What is going through this Luya man's mind?
Gladys, that was a red flag. Like I'm going to suffer in this life before I go to the, you know. Ugali, you know, the way Luyas do church and all that, we do it with a lot of strength.
Yes.
So ugali has to function. So when I met and she was eating mokimo, a bit of njahe, I have a story about njahe. It is interesting food that it should end, people eating it should end in Nakuru, not past that. But the point is, when you see your favorite meal being shoved lower in the pecking order of meals, that's quite a red flag, you know. So I was a bit concerned and I needed to address it. And I think 7 years later, I'm doing a very good job.
Well, clearly you have changed the tide in that house. Eh? Okay, so I'm just wondering, at what point did you come to decide, you know what, the food doesn't really matter, where we come from doesn't really matter, what matters is what we believe this relationship can become? Candy?
I think like Pastor Cynthia had said, learning to talk. Of course, mokimo is dear to us where we come from.
Yes.
But you see, you realize when we both talk about, say, if it's food, we are both able to agree, it doesn't become an issue. And once in a while, we'll have the mokimo, we'll have the ugali. But learning how to talk about your differences makes a whole difference. I think for me, especially when I went to his home, and I discovered for them ugali is the main dish, you know. And anyway, it's also easy to make. I learned how to adapt and adjust.
And for you, Duncan?
Well, now that we're talking about food, I think it's a give and take. Of course, when you're dating, you can pretend a bit, you know, eat a whole morsel of mokimo. Then you say, I have a confession. This mokimo thing is not working for me, you know.
Yes.
And even, you know, forget about even the meal in itself. When you talk about how the meals are prepared, you know, the way water is a secret ingredient in some quarters.
Yes.
Then the whole meal, every meal is put on one plate. Like, what's going on here? There's a reason why each meal should have its own identity. In Luya, each meal is given its own plate. Why are you putting... You know, the day I saw my in-laws eating fish with a spoon, I knew I needed to correct this. I had invited them, you know.
Yes.
I had invited them over and I saw them eat fish using a fork and I was like, hey, lesson number 1, go wash your hands.
Yes.
Lesson number 2, touch the ugali with your hands, feel it first.
Have a relationship.
Feel its texture before you throw it in your mouth. There's a whole art to this. And you don't have to go to Japan to do this. Lunjes are just next door. They can help you go. Yeah, and I think those differences are very interesting. Even the meal structure. In Meru, they eat meat last. Can you imagine? I used to feel like that goat died in vain. How can you eat after you've eaten all them? They call them mashakuras. I don't know. After you've eaten all that, then they bring meat on a platter. You have to eat them like the way we eat njugus in Western. I'm like, this is so wrong. Just make the ugali and the meat. Then the rest, let's do the rice as dessert, you know?
Oh wow. Clearly you guys have worked through the differences and bring the humor in it so that it makes it a little bit easier to deal with these things. And Cynthia, just listening to this couple, you can hear a lot of adaptability. And they say, for example, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. So this man has met a woman who thinks about food a different way from him. And he not only has to deal with her, but has to deal with her whole family. So how do you maneuver this to ensure that you keep your relationship going, but also respecting the culture where the other person comes from?
Him telling this story has erupted some amazing stories that we've gone through. So I identify with what he's talking about. But the key here, Gladys, is from what you're hearing is that no assumptions. Don't go into this relationship assuming that your in-laws will welcome your ugali the same way they have eaten ugali for the last 40-something years with a spoon, you know.
Yes.
Or they love a lot of water in their fish. You know, that's how they've eaten it for 40 years. So as a couple, no assumptions. Let's not assume that the way I have brought up my children is the way that they were brought up. So when you come into this relationship, the two of you, you've got to put assumptions aside and you've got to discuss very openly. You know, I like ugali and my ugali has to be firm like a rock, you know. And that was a struggle for me because the ugali that we make in Central is not firm. It's a very softer, you know, like papa.
Yes.
It's a softer ugali, and my husband thought, this is uncooked stuff. What are you doing? You know, and he would not eat my ugali. And for me, I've eaten it for the last 35 years. You know, I got married older. So I'm wondering what's wrong with my ugali. And I had to observe because, again, you can't go with assumption. Let me see how you do your ugali. Let me see how you cook your nyama or you cook your fish. Because my fish, the one that I used to make, to be totally honest, Gladys, I had never eaten a fish with eyes. You know, the one that has scales.
Oh.
Ever in my whole entire life. I had seen it in pictures or I had seen people eating that. And I know my mom had said that if you eat, you will die.
Oh.
Yes, you will die.
A whole fish.
If you eat because of the bones.
Yes.
You will choke and die.
Okay.
Now, hey, I'm invited by my mother-in-law. Love her to death. She makes for me a fish and it has eyes. Remember my mom told me I'll die. Things are thick. And so I was so nervous. I was watching as they remove a bone. I'm thinking, whoo, this is work. My food was cold. They were worried. This girl, is she going to eat? Again, my husband had to teach me how to eat the fish well, how to eat it well, how to make the mbogas well. My mother-in-law had to teach me that. So there's no assumption. Don't assume that just because we are all growing up in Nairobi, that we've all been exposed to the same culture. Teach each other. I teach my couples that teach each other how to do life together. Don't go with assumption that she's a woman, she should already know. No, we don't always know.
All right. Now, the one other point that would be very critical is you've dated, you've agreed this will work, you've figured out your differences. Then comes the wedding day, which now calls on to the bigger community to come and celebrate with you. Kendi and Duncan, how was that day? Let me start off with Kendi.
I think for me, the interesting part was when they came to pick me in the morning and we had Sikuti guys dancing early in the morning. That does not happen where I come from. And the Viga, which they used to dance and all, I think that was quite interesting. Then I'd always seen at weddings, they put like some Christmas things around you. I think that didn't happen to us.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think for me just the dancing and all was quite interesting. I'd not really seen that happening.
Now, they say when it comes to planning the wedding, the lady is heavily involved. But of course, it's a journey you walk together. With all the differences in the cultural backgrounds, was that an issue? Did you have to go through a pull and tug? Let me hear from Duncan.
Well, I think my role became very clear that I needed to look for the money as she does the planning. Even from a personality standpoint, Kendi and I are very different. We are East and West. She knows what we'll eat for Christmas. I have no idea. I live every day at a time. So I realized that strength up front. And then so I let her, you know, sort of take the lead in that sense. But you had mentioned earlier about just the intricacies around the planning, the thinking, the cultural. When we went for dowry negotiation, you know, us guys are used to haggling, like send them, tell them it is 1 million, then they bring back, tell them no, that is worth 5 wives, you know. But then we go to Meru and these guys, the first thing they give us is food. In Luya, you first of all deal with the issue, then eat. These guys give us food and we're like, hey, is this a trap, you know? So already things start panning out in that sense.
Yeah.
Then, of course, finally, I think the father was like, mtatupea ile iko na heshima, you know, very respectfully. And we're like, no, how are we being given? Is it that the product has a problem? You know, those are things from a Luhya perspective. You're wondering, we need to bring 13 cows, things like that. And then I usually joke with Kendi. I used to say, the day I saw her relatives dancing themselves lame at our wedding, I knew there's a problem. Like they have shoved off their problem to me. I started panicking. But from a cultural standpoint,
yes,
they are laid back. Merus are very serious with life. They rarely will dance silly on the roadside, but Luyas are very. Our cultures play out.
Yes.
From a Meru standpoint, cultures are within family. It's tied within. It's very rarely will you see things spilling over. Us guys from the other side, we are very proud of our culture. We spill everything on the road. If we will need to circumcise someone and the urgency is we do it on the road, so be it. And these are things that if you don't debrief, they will injure you. Think of it this way also. There's a way, as a Luhya worldview, is the man should not even be in the kitchen in the first place, And then you're marrying in Nairobi, where you can cook once in a while, help and support. But then you tell your wife, when you go home, please don't sit with me. Because my aunties will waylay you and beat your arm because they feel you're lazy. So we can discuss about you not being lazy, but if you have been beaten, how do you avoid it? Go wear that kitenge thingy and just go and, so those are things that play out. But I think that the most important thing is debrief, unpack these things, tell her these realities, tell them your worldview, and how it's different from them in that sense.
So Kendi, you're putting together the wedding and clearly the marriage is becoming more real to you, and you can see some of the things you were dealing with Duncan clearly are becoming bigger now that the community is being involved in. What are you thinking at this point?
At times you look at it like it's common sense. We've grown up doing things this way. Why don't you people see it that way? But there are things you really have to be quite sensitive, especially if they touch on family. And unless if the two of you are able to debrief, they can be marriage breakers, because, I can easily tell him, why are your people doing this? Why are your people doing that? Forgetting that he's also looking at our culture and wondering, why do people cook food this way? Yeah. So, I think what we normally do is we talk about it, and an example we give, like now when we are going home, maybe for the introductions and all, like he debriefs you, like you'll ask him what is expected of us, what are we supposed to do, how do we go about it, so that you end up, you sort of cover each other, and you're able to walk through that journey easily. But if you don't talk about those things, that's what I say, if you don't communicate, if you don't talk about those things, they can become marriage breakers. Small things like even naming children, how us guys name and how they name is quite different,
Yeah. And we'll get to the bringing up the kids in a moment. I understand we have a caller from Bungoma, that is Simon. Simon, what is your question or comment?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm getting this topic very interesting, the interracial marriages.
Yes.
Actually, the victory of a home is much, much more in the interracial marriages. Why? Because the man, originally, he's supposed to form his own family independent from the father's family. And now, when you marry a lady from another community or another race, it helps you to start your own independent family from your father's family. And then there are memories people carry into the marriages that are negative. If the man comes with the memories from his community, and the lady doesn't have the same memory, and the man also the same for both, you find that those negative issues, traits that you carry from your previous your community don't play in your marriage. Then you find you start your own marriage, in fact, from a clean slate that you have no memories of traits from your communities that come into the marriages and even destabilize them. Then you find that way it helps you to start your marriage, a unique marriage on a clean state.
Yes.
I mean, a clean slate, and you can move on well. You want to just reorganize yourselves without having any interferences from your community. That's what I would say about interracial marriages.
Okay.
To me, Gladys,
yes,
those are the best marriages. I'm speaking from experience.
Excellent, excellent, Simon. Thank you for calling in.
I'm a counseling psychologist, so that's what I do with couples. Thank you. Goodbye.
Asante Sana. We have somebody from Eldoret. That is Maxwell. What's your question or comment?
Hello, Gladys.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Yes.
It's quite an interesting topic in the morning. I'm from Eldoret.
Yes.
And I've actually married, I'm married to a Nandi, and I'm a Kikuyu. And it came at a very tricky time during the post-election violence. That's when we were having our small baby. And I remember both of our parents were really opposed to this relationship because, you know, what is happening in Eldoret, what was happening then in Eldoret. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Yes. So I would say this is the best, I think, because it takes care of what we have, like as a problem in Kenya with the tribal thing. Now I have 2 children, and I remember one time my son was asking me, "So what am I?" And I told him, "You're a Kenyan. Your mom is a Kalenjin and I'm a Kikuyu. And yeah, you are a Kenyan." I think when it comes to marriage, and you love somebody who does not come from your tribe, you should go for it. It should not be a question of like, where does he come from? What is the tribal thing? Like, oh, the culture is different and what? No, you're not marrying a culture. You're not marrying a community. You're marrying someone. I think for me, if I would not have married my wife, I don't think I would have gotten the partner that I have now, who I think I'm ready to grow old and die together with.
Oh, wow.
Thank you so much for this really good topic, and I'm asking everybody out there, just go for it. Don't,
Thank you, Maxwell.
Have a good day, and I like the couple from Bungoma and the mountain area. I think that's really, really interesting.
All right, thank you, Maxwell, and also for that word of encouragement. I mean, Cynthia, it is very clear from all the callers and, of course, our couple in studio that the differences are there. And you have to be very aware of them because, again, as one of the callers is saying, you're meeting somebody who has been a certain way for many years. And these cultural beliefs run deep. How do you maneuver?
Oh, wow. Wow. Listening to the 2 callers, you can tell they're coming from a place of deep experience because of what they have had to go through. And that's critical. Gladys, you've got to understand that we cannot erase who we are. I come with my culture, my community, my religion, and you come with yours. And what we do is we place it on the table. And it's very important for us to know that because I cannot erase who I am and what I have come with. But we can put it on the table, embrace it and say, what will these 2 bring? One of the things that we speak to couples and tell them, what is ahead of you? What's the vision you want to create? What's the thing that if we squeeze you, it will ooze the oneness that you're creating? The beauty of this, let's say the couple here, the Luya and the Meru coming together has created such an amazing bond because the richness of her Meru-ness and the richness of his Luya-ness brings about a new fragrance, a new flavor. He does not erase his Luya-ness. She doesn't erase her Meru-ness, but they both bring what God created them to be. And I love that. I love that they create a new tribe, a new culture, a new community, but still have the richness of both. Like the caller said that the children asked him, That's the reality. The reality is when children come into the world, let me tell you, Gladys, it's going to create a new difference. And it accentuates that difference. Why? Because the children will now go to school and they'll say, am I Kikuyu or am I Luo? My children have asked me that. And one of the things we've sat them down and said, yes, your mom may be Kikuyu, your dad is Luo, but you're Kenyan. And then one day she said, no, I have to choose a tribe. Mommy, I have to choose a tribe. And it was such a difficult conversation where we had to sit down and say, why do you feel you have to choose a tribe? What's propagating this conversation? Why do I have to feel that I can't be both? And they're learning both languages. They're learning to embrace those two communities because that's who they are. And so it's so important that the celebration of that comes forth in the family. Yeah.
Okay, let me hear from Duncan and Kendi. You are, of course, looking forward to be parents, but of course that issue about parenting children, again, as Kendi, you said, who will you name, where, who, what, is that something that you've had discussions with as a couple and of course with the larger in-laws?
Yes, Gladys, it's something we've always discussed, we've talked about it. And I think for us, our agreement is we are both Christians, believers. So we believe when it comes to bringing up our children, issues like naming, we will align ourselves with what God says about children and about naming of our children. And I think, yeah, those are things we've agreed.
Okay, and coming from a man's point of view?
That's what she's saying. I'm listening to God.
Yes.
But I think also, just to touch a little bit of how we do naming, I mean, we name based on seasons. You'll hear Wafula, I think the mother was being rained on when she was giving, then Wanjala, there was a bit of hunger or a lot of food, things like that. We name per seasons in that sense.
Yes.
And sometimes, you know, you will hear people saying, mbona wanaitwa wanyama or something like that, wanyama wengi, things like that, which are insensitive, but it's a beautiful name. We just named him in that sense. So naming, our Christianity, so to say, introduced a worldview that we then embrace or meet somewhere where we say, hey, how would we like to name our children? But that not said, and I liked what Cynthia said, there's a beauty in the culture where sometimes you actually want the children to have a solid identity and not just call them Peter James or something like that. If my children are called Juma or Juma Wafula or Juma Nasimiyu or whatever, I'll still be happy. But I think I also have to be aware that in this relationship, I'm not alone. And so I have to pick it up and say, hey, we are in this together. If not, then let our children have 5 names. You give 2, I give 2. And, you know, what I'm saying is let's unpack, let's talk about it. So we are open to discussions around just being sure that you're also not annoying or injuring. Because I've also had scenarios where you'll be told, you must name this firstborn after my mother or something like that, you know. And those are things if you don't. And sometimes what happens is that until you get the baby, that those things emerge. You know, you didn't see them coming because you're in love, and love covered a multitude of sin, and you just didn't see it coming. And then your mother-in-law shows up and says, hey, am I being named or not? You know, that's quite a tricky question. You start asking, and where did that come from? So even as we discuss, we must also understand that we live in a community, and in that sense also balancing it out or explaining why perhaps maybe we are delinking certain names from certain quarters in that sense would be important.
Okay, Kendi, let me get your opinion on this. So there are certain rituals that are done around children. For example, there's some, you know, cultures that believe when a baby is born, the mother is the one who has to shave the child. You know, that fast hair?
Yeah.
Then there are some communities, when they're older, they say the initiation process, the circumcision, needs to be done when they're actually, you know, getting into puberty. And others believe it should be after 8 days of birth or somewhere in between. So what do Merus say and what do Luya say and what have you agreed on?
Luyas will believe, okay, I think there's that thing of shaving of the hair by the mother, the husband's mother. Meru, we don't have that. We don't have most of those practices at all. But I think with Juma, we've agreed we are open. Okay, we also believe in finding out what does that mean? Where does it come from? What is the reasoning behind it?
Yes.
And we've had discussions about it. When that time comes, we will decide whether it will be done or not. But I think where I've come from, I've not had it at all.
Now, Mlunje, there are some things that you hold dear to your heart.
My mother has to. Anyway. This is the thing. I think one of the tricky things about our generation is we have inherited cultures that we don't even know where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Like, let me unpack this. The shaving of children, largely from a Luya community, was so that the mother can identify the child as a touch point. So they use the shaving as an excuse, but they're actually checking whether the nose belongs to the community, the ears, you haven't been played. So the only thing is now, it kept perpetuating without the reasons why we do those things. And because of that, then it's taken in so bad state. It's like, hey, this sounds like witchcraft. What do you mean? Must she, you know, we want our children to be Nazarites. They will never have to be shaved, you know, things like that. So the point here is that sometimes there are those cultures that if you actually interrogate, you realize they are baseless, but they can actually cause a lot of tension.
Yeah.
You can, because when a mother gives birth to a child, especially from an intercultural space, you know those things you do and you're not explaining why you're doing them. They wonder what's going on. Are you blessing or are you cursing my child? What are you doing? So unpacking and explaining, but the two of you ultimately have to decide. Have to decide what you need to do because you're really in charge of that family. There are things you must reach a place where you say, because it doesn't sit well with my partner, I also don't want to strain my relationship with her. And these children perhaps will be living after 14 or 18 years. I still want to have a relationship with this lady. So discussing it, but also I've seen the reverse where you beat people for their culture. You know, I didn't choose, and I liked what Pastor Cynthia was mentioning. I did not choose to be lawyer. I'm happy to be born in the space I was born in. And my people do certain things that I also don't agree with, but I'm like, they're my people. You know? You know the way when you get married, they tell you you're getting married to Kendi alone. But you see also, if she has a drunk uncle, somehow she will feature in my conversation. She's still part of this marriage. If he's sick, we will participate. So in that sense, the two of us can discuss, but also by and large, as I mentioned earlier, our third Christian lens lends a lot to how we want to do our family or how we want to do our bidding in our space.
Very interesting perspective there. Well, remember, our question of the day to you is, do you know someone or are you in an intercultural or interracial marriage? And what are the challenges you face and how do you make it work? That hashtag is a new normal. And Charlie Ray says, I'm born out of an intercultural marriage and I can tell you it has its own unique challenges. Sometimes you lack a specific belonging. Interesting perspective. Nicolas Ikumi says, it's not different. You eat, sleep, argue, steal from each other, just like all other relationships. Still tender. Christian Gerald says, I was married to a Luo girl. I couldn't understand what they were talking about on the phone, only to realize they used to backbite me with a family. Oh my word. Christian, we hear you and we'll talk about the flip side of this arrangement. Harrison says, interracial is the best for me. Interesting. Chelsea D says, it's not for the faint-hearted. It's for people who have an open mind, ready to learn, ready to compromise, ready to communicate. The more confined you are to yourself, the harder it will be. But just like any other relationship, it takes two to tango. Well said, Chelsea. Peter Brooks says it's hectic, like she is so much into their culture to an extent that she makes almost all her phone communications in her native language. All she thinks is an all-time city lifestyle, and if any reason wants us to buy land and build in Nairobi or anywhere near their rural homes. Wow. Decisions, and we'll talk more about this. So he says intercultural marriage is really hard. Like us Kalenjins, it's hard for us to communicate using these exotic languages during a fight or argument in their house. Surely. So We hear you. Mama Appel says, I tried that and it came out very bad. In fact, anytime ningepatikana kwa mistake, my whole community wangetusiwa proper. So in my next dating, I'll only date Luos, my tribesmen. Well, we are taking more of your feedback on our social media space, that is #NewNormal, and of course on those numbers at the bottom of your screen. Remember, we are not only focusing on the intercultural, we are also focusing on the interracial, because this is a reality with us today. So as the conversation continues, we need to hear the youth's perspective on this conversation. Brad Mushiri spoke to 3 young people, Helen, Morgan and Cairo Karega, just to understand what young people have to say about this conversation. Here's today's episode of Your Voice.
Good morning, this is Your Voice and my name is Brian Mushiri. Today, Your Voice is not in the streets, it's in studio, because I got 3 young people to talk to me about marriage from different tribes and cultures. Right next to me is Morgan and Helen, and then there is Cairo Karega. Guys, how are you people?
Hey Brian.
Mko poa?
Hi, good morning.
Mimi nimekam tuongee hii story, muniambie, would you marry from someone that is not from your tribe? Let's start with the lady in the group.
Well, I don't see a problem with it totally, as long as both of you are connecting. I think diversity is good.
Your folks would constantly be fine with you marrying from or getting married from a tribe that is not where you come from?
Well, they wouldn't be, but once you're an adult, I think there's always a way that you can be able to negotiate with your parents if they're not comfortable with you marrying from another tribe.
Do you get into a relationship already preempting that you will marry this lady, and if you're going to marry them, itakusumbua that they are not Kikuyu? Because I'm seeing Cairo Karega.
I doubt tribe will be the #1 factor, because if a lady is walking down, you don't hana a sticker on her that she's a Kikuyu or she's a Luo, she's a Kalenjin. If she's beautiful, she's beautiful. Eh? Kama ni malisafi una appreciate. I don't think malisafi inaenda na tag. So okay. Plus there's some things that if you constrain yourself to a certain tribe, what if you don't get the Kikuyu lady that you want? What if you don't get the Luo lady that you want? And the Masai is the one that has all the things that you want. So I believe do justice to yourself.
If we are talking about, say, Kikuyu, and tunajua the direction that the marriage process in the Kikuyu culture and community works, then you're here, you come to tell your parents that I want to marry in Luya land. How hiyo itaenda vizuri sana na wazazi kweli, na wanataka sisi tunajua venye kunafuatanga maneno ya Kikuyu in terms of ratio?
Well, ideally for me, I would say the first thing that happens is it's you who is marrying. Of course, the parents have a place to play. But then for me, I think it's you who is marrying. And you see, you can't go around asking all ladies, hey, are you a Kikuyu? Let me marry you. Or, hey, you're a Luya, let me marry you. For me, I think when we talk about, let's say, something like love at first sight, if that strikes, man, you don't have time to ask about the tribe. But, well, I think for me, if I can just digress slightly kidogo, yeah. For me, my folks would have a problem with some just very 2 tribes. And man, my dad has sat me a number of times, countless, telling me, son, please don't try to do that. Don't try bring that at home.
I know several people, even my friends, wenye mama yao na baba yao wamewaketisha chini wakawambia cheki. Huku hakuolewangwi ama huwa hatuoi kutoka kwa ile community ingine. Helen, is this something maybe that you've had a conversation with your folks from, or is this something that you've had at least from a friend, and what's your take on it?
Well, yeah, I've heard about it. It happens. Parents sit you down and they tell you, by the way, nisisikie mtu kutoka kwa kabila fulani huku. But then you listen to them, but you know, life doesn't work like that. You know, you go out there, you meet someone, they're from a different tribe, so what's next?
When you get married and have children with this gentleman, and Cairo, I'm just bringing you back, there are certain fundamental aspects of your relationship and your child bringing up a child that you have things like circumcision. There are some communities, and Morgan, I can see you nodding from where I sit. I'll let you also weigh in on that. something like circumcision. There are some communities that do it as early as when a child is 7 years old. There are those that do it that is fairly common after class 8, that's around 13 years old. Cairo, what do you make of this?
I think some of these things is just for me and her to sit down and agree and come to a win-win situation, because I don't think it will be such a big issue. I don't think for me it will be a deal breaker for me not to marry the woman of my dreams, because apparently she will not, she'll tell me I want my son to be circumcised at class 1. Oh, if I really love her, I'll just maybe let her circumcise Basi, because even the main reason for circumcision is health. So I don't think it will be a deal breaker for me, some of these things. I think as long as we mutually respect one another and we can sit down and have a mature conversation on some of these things, because it's going to be a reality that we have different cultures and we have come from different cultures, and of course there's some things that we'll have to do differently, but the reality of the matter is that we'll have to sit down and talk together, because we will have known we are both from different tribes.
Oh, just to touch something on that, Brian.
Yeah.
See, I'm looking at the 21st century parent. See, there's a difference between the 21st century parent and, you know, those old generation, because those, you see, the difference comes in when those old generation parents, they used to decide, you know, for you, I had, some would even go to an extent of getting for you a girlfriend. You cannot deny two people who have loved each other and then to come together so that, you know, they can experience the aspect of love. Now, coming to the issue of agreement in terms of some of the cultural backgrounds, ideally, I think, because the purpose of marriage, these are two people who are coming from different cultural backgrounds. Necessarily, the beauty of it is the ability to accept and come into a consensus, bearing in mind that the people from this culture, they have this kind of, you know, the way you've talked about something like circumcision. So now the beauty comes in when she brings her idea and says, for us, we circumcise at this age, and, you know, you from your side, you say we circumcise. Now, when you come to a consensus, I believe that is something that makes the marriage sweeter.
I would like you to weigh in on that aspect, culture. We've gotten married, we're from two different cultures.
I think just like Morgan and Cairo have said, it's about consensus between both of you, because then once you are together, you already know that you're from different cultures and there is no culture that is similar to the other. So the solution is to sit down as partners and agree on the way forward, because otherwise they are going to be chaos. And that is where now again parents come in and they're like, si tulikuambia, you see. So the best thing I think is to first accept that you're coming from different backgrounds, you're coming from different cultures, you're coming from different upbringings, and once you accept that, it becomes easy.
Let's look at what happened during COVID-19 period. Some tribes circumcised their boys after class 8, but when there was no KCP last year, so plus class 8 haitakuwa, si kuna CBC, there'll be class 6.
Okay.
So you see, these cultures, most of them are just imposed on us, I tend to think.
And culture
like,
is not religion.
Yeah,
anyway.
there's no way it has been written on stone that thou must do this and that.
Na watu wasipate notion mbaya nikitumia Helen, she's the only lady kwa hii panel. But kenye unasema ni mimi na Helen tukiamua kuoana. Na wazazi wangu wameniambia usijaribu kuoa kwa hiyo tribe ya kina Helen tafadhali. Na ukioa hauko na baraka zetu. Alafu tukosane tu kidogo. You know how marriage goes. Sometimes kukuwe na small tiff. Ati itakuwa wataniambia sisi tulikuambia.
Oh my God, and they really love that part. They really love that aspect, because you see,
but
as
you
a
married
parent,
your partner, you didn't marry your parents.
Helen, what do you have to say about this?
Okay, I think let me first start with the culture thing.
Yes.
I feel like some cultures are very retrogressive, and culture is not religion. You don't have to follow it. Just do what works for you. And every family has its own culture. Forget about the tribe thing. I feel like the family is the smallest unit in the society, and every family has its own unique culture. So how about you as partners sit down and come up with your unique culture? Let not culture dictate you on how you're going to live your life. You know.
My director keeps telling me time is up. Any final remarks, lady and gentlemen?
Create your own family culture. I think that's my...
that's your take out of
my take. It is your life.
Yeah.
You decide which direction it takes.
And this you're speaking to, sorry Morgan, and this you're speaking to young people out there who are about to get themselves into marriage perhaps?
Nevertheless, Brian, yes, of course we're speaking to the young people who are about to get married. As much as we discussing and talking about saying that you are the person who the final decision rests with,
okay,
the part of the parents that has not to be ignored, because there has to be that aspect of consultation. There has to be that aspect of consultation of how do this, how do that. So ideally, my final remarks is that go for who you love, but at least make your parents know.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This morning, it's all about marriage from different tribes. Na hiyo ndiyo kauli ya the young people in the room. They say they don't really care where their partner comes from, which tribe they are from, or which culture they believe in. It's all about love. And to the young people out there, let your parents live their lives and you live your life. My name is Brian Mushiri. Good morning.
An interesting Your Voice edition there by Brian Mushiri, and you've had from the youngsters. The issue is not them, it's actually the parents that normally have an issue, and they say usiwai leta mtu wa pahali na pahali kwa hii nyumba. And we'll talk about what happens when the parents say no. And also, we'll get to introduce the other couple in this conversation, an interracial couple, and we're talking about Liz and Solomon Ocampo, who are joining us from the comfort of their home. The intricacies of interracial couples are also immense, but then again, how do you maneuver to have a happy marriage? We'll answer that and many other questions right after this break.
Kenya Revenue Authority, we believe in second chances. Take advantage of the voluntary tax disclosure program, which is valid up to 31st December 2023. Apply online on itax.kra.go.ke. Kenya Revenue Authority, tulipe ushuru tujitegemee.
Kijani Ridge is Tatu City's premier neighborhood, offering a 1.5-acre fully serviced plot in a controlled development. The plots overlook a beautiful dam with natural green spaces. Kijani Ridge is a walking distance from Nova Pioneer and Crawford International Schools. Families are already moved in and more homes are under construction. Contact us for daily site visits and join us for our mega open weekend on 6th and 7th March.
Maie, hii nayo utangoja sana nichukue. Sichukui, niko juu ya pikipiki. Na sheria ya barabara inasema heri kupata missed call kuliko kupata ajali.
To get Piki by Adis Jojo, dial *811 *936#. Skiza, Nan Nation.
I'm on a mission to find out the impact of rising debts in Nigeria to citizens, businesses, and government's ability to deliver essential services.
The term cripple, kinky, or frizzy, when we talk about African hair, it's an insult because this is the terminology we use to talk about animal hair.
Imeshuka bei, smartphone ya nguvu, 4G screen kubwa ya kuwatch game ni 3,999 pekee. Ni ukweli.
Pata smartphone ya nguvu kwa bei nafuu kutoka kwa duka la Safaricom au dila leo. Safaricom, for you.
Thank you for staying with Your World. My name is Gladys Gashanja. Today we're having a very interesting conversation about intermarriages, intercultural and interracial marriages. And still with me, Cynthia Wamboyo-Otieno, who is a love, life and relationship coach, Duncan and Candy Juma, who have an intercultural marriage. We are now also joined by Liz and Solomon Ocampo, who have an interracial marriage. And it's interesting that each of these have different intricacies, yet very similar ones. And that's why today we would like to debunk some of them. And speaking of which, our question of the day to you is, do you have any of these experiences and how do you make it work? Remember, that hashtag is new normal. Owino Maxwell says, the Bible condemns such marriages. Allah, Israelites were ordered to marry from their tribes. I say, peoples, are you hearing this? Purity Ngetid says, tutagombanaje. Hi, Cliff Ochomo says, kwa ground vitu ni different. Kenyans are very skeptical people when it comes to intercultural marriages. We hear you. Joe Sheke says, most end in tears. Okay, Joe. We have John Awache who says, big no. They will bring their own culture that doesn't rhyme with ours. All right, John. Job Njagi says, my son doesn't know any mother tongue. He answers everything in Kiswahili. Interesting. Is this intentional? Wellington Olonyi says, if there's one thing the history of evolution has taught us, it's that that life will not be contained. It breaks free of all the barriers, expands to new territories, and crashes through most cultural, religious, or ethnic barriers, sometimes painfully or dangerously. But, well, when love comes knocking, there will always be a way. Wellington, thank you for sharing that with us. And interesting perspectives there in as far as if you would be part and parcel of an intercultural or an interracial marriage. Now, let's bring in the Ocampos. Now, this is quite an interesting couple because they actually came together because their marriage was arranged. Yeah, they had an arranged marriage. Let me hear it from Liz, the Kenyan who got married to a Filipino. How did this come together?
Well, Gladys, my parents are the ones who actually were able to link me up with Solomon because his parents, they were great friends. They were missionaries here in Kenya. And so one day my mother went to Philippines. When she came back, she told me I'm going to marry Solomon.
Okay, so is it that the families knew each other, or how is it that she was so agreeable to the idea?
Well, my mother really loved his mother. They were such great friends. They were like best friends. And so I think they just sat down together and decided we need our children to get married so we can seal this friendship. But actually Solomon's family, his entire siblings, his parents are the ones who choose their spouses. So I just happened to be now the one next in line, and I was chosen for him.
Interesting perspective. So when you get this call from your mom that you're getting married to Solomon, you're thinking?
Well, I'm thinking there's no way I'm doing this. I'm like, I told her, please tell the Ocampos there's no way I'm doing that. I don't think I'm ugly, that I'm not attracting any man that I need to be arranged for. And so I really was very against it for the longest time. About 2 years, I really opposed the idea.
All right, let's hear from Solomon. So you come from a family of 12 siblings. Each of those, your family has decided who they will marry or who they'll get married to. How did you take the fact that you needed to also go down the same path?
Yes, for me, I had accepted that, seeing all my siblings go through it, and all of them up to now are happily married. And they have kids, lots of kids. But my challenge at that time was I was very close-minded. I told my parents, you can choose for me, but please let it be a Filipina. I was very close-minded to my own race. I just was a very patriotic person. I still am. So that was the challenge for me with this arrangement.
Okay, and at what point did you change your mind?
Well, when I felt that inside of me, in my heart of hearts, as we say, I felt that this was the right thing for me to do, although my brain and my emotions were not agreeing with it, and I really told my parents to please just look for a Filipina. But inside of me, there was like a witness, there was a peace, an assurance that this was the right person for me, even though logically I may not prefer.
Okay, so let me hear from Liz. So this is an arranged marriage. The parents have agreed. You've been told you're getting married. When did you get to know Solomon for yourself?
Well, I got to know him like 1 week before the wedding. We had time to talk, but not much because there's a lot of wedding ruckus. So after our honeymoon is when we really got time to talk and know each other, because our honeymoon was also attended by both families, his family and my family. So we didn't have time to know each other. And so after the honeymoon, now when we get to our home, that's when we start asking each other, so what was your second name? What's your favorite color? So yeah.
Okay, and when you say when we got to our
stranger.
home, was it in Philippines or back here in Kenya?
It was in Philippines. I had moved everything, packed all my stuff, and I moved to the Philippines.
Interesting. So Solomon, you are getting to know this lady, and clearly you start seeing some things are definitely different culturally, personality. How did you handle all this newness?
Oh yeah, it was like a adventure, thrilling, exhilarating. Everything was new. Everything was foreign and different. It was a learning experience. So I handled it by just being open and trying to learn, and not being close-minded, because it was going to be more difficult. I have to admit, it was difficult. The first year of our marriage, I would say, was the hardest in all of the years we've been married, because that was the adjusting period where both of us were blending together, you know, coming from the East Asian and then the East African culture, completely different races. Everything was different, except only maybe for the Christian background. Both of our families were Christian, raised in a Christian home, but everything else was different.
Okay, so Liz, you are a Kamba from this country and you've gone to the Philippines. You're looking around at the food they eat is different from yours, and of course many other things that they do. Did you undergo culture shock, or was it easy to adopt?
I really underwent a lot of culture shock. First, in the beginning, I did not understand any ingredient. As a new wife, I'm ready to cook for my husband, but I'm not understanding anything in the market. We'll go to the market, the only thing I'm understanding is onions and garlic. Anything else I don't know. Even the fruits are different. I'm used to mangoes and oranges and watermelon. Here I'm seeing mangosteen, rambutan, and other things that don't make sense to me. I don't even know how they're peeled, how they're cut. Are we eating with the peels? How do we do this? And everything that I had practiced for marriage that I'm going to cook, nothing was working, because I didn't even know how to cook what was there. So it was very different. And also in the Philippines, at that time in 2014, there were very few black people. So everywhere we went, we were just a shock, you know. Everybody's just looking at you. I was just a wonder, you know. So it was very hard. And personally, I don't like to stand out. I like to blend in. And so it was just a lot of culture shock.
Okay, so Solomon, you have a wife who's trying to figure it all out but be the best wife to you. How do you support her?
Well, at first she thought I was not supporting her, because every time we would go to the market, I would ask the vendor, the seller, okay, how do you cook this? Can you tell my wife how to do this? Little did I know I was insulting her with that. So those were the learning period, but I supported her by just embracing the way she would do things. And also she would cook for me Kenyan food, of course, and I was very open to that. I'm proud to say that I try to eat almost all Kenyan food. Almost. There are some foods up to now I still can't eat. So that's how I supported her.
Okay, and now that you're back in the country, are things a little bit different for you, because now you're the one in uncharted waters?
Yes, now it's a reverse role, but they say, you know, happy wife, happy life. So that's better for me. A lot of adjustment, definitely. obviously I'm far from my country, and my food, Filipino food, is a bit far from here. So I was trained by my parents, being missionaries, that when I'm sent to another place, that I don't try to eat or try to get what I used to have in the Philippines, but eat local. So that's what I do. A lot of adjustment, as you know, and I'm also, trying to learn the language and just assimilating, trying my best to assimilate.
Okay, how long have you been back for?
We came here 2015, yeah, so almost 7 years now.
Okay, so Liz, back in the country, you have a Filipino husband. How are other Kenyans looking at you?
Oh wow, it has been a challenge. There are places in the city we cannot walk together because we get very much insulted. When we were newlyweds, when we had just come back to Kenya, we were walking hand in hand, I remember this particular time, and we passed these construction workers. And they insulted us from the beginning to the end until we left their site. And so definitely there are parts in the city we do not walk together, and we rather be individuals. But also there are parts in Nairobi which is full of other cultures, so that's where we go together. But certainly we don't like working together because people really abuse us, and for some reason to Kenyans every Asian is mchinko. So you just mchinko, lichukua watu wetu, and so I get so upset. I'm like, si mchinko ni Filipino, so But anyway, I just learned how to deal with, for my own mental health, I just avoid so many places.
All right, and how do you harness the relationship with all these pressures, both within and without? Do you have support from your families?
Well, yes, my family they really love his family. They love him as an individual. In fact, I think my family love him more than they love me right now. So yes, we have a lot of support, and we also have some of his family who live here in Kenya. So I still have some Filipino in-laws that I deal with here in Kenya. So it's been a blending time, and there's just still so much to learn with each other. And for him, even just to get to understand how Kenyans we talk, how we interact with each other, for him it was also a lot to take in, and how my family will just react to him and talk to him. He had to adjust to that, so he was not used to the bluntness we talk in as Kenyans.
Okay, it's been 7 years and of course 4 kids, the 4th one on the way. Has that been a challenge in itself, bringing up children with all these intricacies around your marriage? Solomon?
Oh yes, definitely. For sure, like as Cynthia and the other guests, Candy and husband said, that there's that identity aspect of intercultural, because when they're in the Philippines, we go every year before the pandemic hit. They're not quite fully Filipino. And when they're here, they're not quite fully Kenyan. So on top of the normal raising up your children issues and aspect, there's also that issue of trying to educate them, because like my daughter would say, oh, I'm just Filipina. So we have to train her and say, no, you're Filipino and you're also Kenyan. All right. So there's that identity, and trying to really educate them, because at the same time, we don't want them to let go or erase their identity as Kenyan, and we don't want to erase their identity as Filipino. So we agreed that we're going to teach them that they are both. They are both. So it's not that one culture or one race is bad, one race is better, but you embrace both, because in reality, that's who they are.
Oh, wow. A lot of intentionality there for both couples you've had from their campus, and of course from Juma and Cynthia. Let's start with the stereotypes, because I think stereotypes are one of the biggest hurdles for any kind of intermarriage. How do you handle stereotypes?
How you handle stereotypes is by education. Educating yourselves. You've got to get information. Stereotypes are based on misinformation, misunderstanding, misconstruing. So why don't you both sit down and learn? Learn, where did the stereotypes come from? The stereotype that all Kikuyus are thieves, okay? Where does that come from? All you know, we have all manner of stereotypes in the world, not just in Kenya. So understand where that comes from, and let's not propagate it within the relationship, because that begins to corrode the trust and the mutual understanding within the relationship. So it's very important that you educate yourself, you get to understand where that came from and not use it against your spouse. I really love the Ocampos, because what they have done is that, of course, the family brought them together, but the center of this marriage is strong family values, but godly values as well. And that in any cross-cultural, intercultural, if you have a strong sense of values, that is what is going to be the glue that holds you together. You've got to have something greater than yourself, greater than your Kenyanness or your Americanness, which is God, that will hold the two of you.
Okay. Now, there is something that I think also is a big issue in these relationships. The in-laws. Duncan and Kendi. How do you deal with the in-laws? Because the two of you can agree, but the pressure from without can be quite, you know, daunting. How do you handle this? Let me hear from Kendi.
I think, as I had mentioned earlier on, we did some premarital classes, and I think the thing that has always stood for us, there's a Juma unit and there are our in-laws, both sides, my family and his family. We've always learned to talk about our families. If it comes, say, if there's an issue with my family, I will handle my family. If there's an issue with his family, he'll handle his family. Because if I come in between, watasema huyu ni bibi wa kutoka huko kwingine. So what we've agreed is I deal with my family, he deals with his family. When it comes to issues, say if it's money or whatever issues we have to deal with, I will deal with it. But if it's money, we still have to talk together, so that, assuming maybe if it's my mom who needs some money, I'll tell him about it. We'll discuss about it, so that when we are talking as a Jumas, not as Kendi and not as Juma, so that you avoid those small issues that come about. But also embracing our in-laws. There's so much that can come out of it, you know. You can have a relationship, because my mom-in-law is the one who brought up my husband, and my parents are the ones who brought me up. So we also have to respect each other's families.
All right. And speaking of respect, let me hear from Liz. You have married a Filipina who is living with you in Kenya. And of course, there are times where you are more drawn to your culture. Like somebody was saying, ukikasirika, it's very easy to go back to the Kamba roots, you know, to showcase your frustrations. But how do you ensure you toe that line of mutual respect?
Well, first of all, Filipinos, they are very respectful. So as a Kenyan, even just getting upset in the way we get upset, and as a Kamba, how I get upset was very disrespectful to him. So it has been very hard actually to find the balance. But I think with a lot of intentionality, again, you just find the balance in that.
Okay, interesting. Now, let me have both couples on screen, because this is a question that most people ask. Now that you've walked this talk for 7 years, if you knew what you know now back then, would you do this again? Tuseme tu kweli.
Definitely.
I need the Bible. I need the Bible.
Okay, let's be honest. Perhaps if you had more information, perhaps some things you would have approached them differently. Let me hear from Duncan.
I've had fun. I think I'm an open-minded person. I usually say I came to this relationship to add something. Like, I knew she needed to be happy, and I'm a happy soul. My happiness will kill me if I don't share it. So I came to do this. But Kendi is an amazing woman, great friend. I wish I married her earlier. You know? So I would do this all over again. Sometimes glad is the assumption is if you marry from your own tribe, then you'll be happier, and which is sometimes even nuances. How many Lunje sub-tribes do you know? They don't even speak the same language sometimes, and they can even be. So sometimes I'm happier now, I would say, because of the flavor that I get from my in-laws and all that. Think of it this way. You mentioned about stereotypes. we always talk about lunches and tea. The reality on the ground is Merus take more tea than Luyas. They just don't sing about it. But lunches, the trophy for hot tea, you we can take hot tea. But lunches take more tea. People from Central take more tea than Luyas. It's just that Luyas are loud and, you know, we are happy with the trophy that is stolen, but we don't take more tea than these guys. You know, and because of that, and I liked what Cynthia said, get to learn education, you know. It's important when you actually go in it inductively to find out for yourself. So I'll do this again if I'm to begin again. Yeah.
Okay.
Without knowing what I know.
All right. Yeah. And their campus, Solomon, tell us, if you knew what you know now back then, would you have approached some things differently?
I would be tempted to say, yes, I would have approached it differently because before we got married, there was actually a period of 2 years when Liz told me no. So I would be tempted to say, yes, I would have wished we got married at that time, to have gotten married 2 years earlier. But thinking about it, not really, because that 2 years she was able to spend going out, and she was dating at that time. She was going out, and it led her back to me. So I guess that's good that it happened. At least now she has no regrets.
Okay, and your words of encouragement for those that wear the shoes you walk in on a daily, Liz?
Definitely, word of encouragement is you have to go back to what brought you together, and it cannot be love and feelings and all that. Because those fade away in marriage. You have to have an anchor, and God is your anchor. It has to be God, and you are answerable to Him. How you treat your husband, how he treats you, He's answerable to God. And for me, I would say if I'd married somebody else, I believe Solomon was created for me. I believe it with all my heart, because I go through, even right now, as you're seeing, I'm going through a very difficult pregnancy. But Saul has nursed me through and just handled me as an egg. I would say, like, I could break at any time. And let me tell you, Filipinos, they can love you hadi upendeke. So I wouldn't change anything. And definitely, I was like, just to stick on what you know, and that God will direct you. And if He directs you to the different race, different tribe, do not block those blessings, because you could be crying if you married your same race.
Amen to that. Thank you for sharing your journey. And Cynthia, as we close this conversation, I think it is important to reiterate the place of respect in this relationship, but also the place of society to enhance more of these relationships, and also not to lose the culture aspect that each of these parties brings to the table.
Yes. And I would say that whatever you bring to the table is a difference, which should never break you, but make you. Celebrate that difference, make it stand out. Number two, understand and learn the gender roles, the roles that the community that you choose. You choose what our community looks like, and make it stand out. Number three, communicate. I'd rather you over-communicate than under-communicate, because that's where your strength is going to lie. And the last but not least, values. What is that glue that is going to hold you together? Beyond your family, beyond everything else, find out what that glue is, and if it's God, make Him count. Bring Him at the center of this relationship, and you will thrive in your relationship.
Very well said. That is Cynthia Wamboyo-Otieno, who is a love, life and relationship coach, and she speaks from experience. She is married to a Luo herself, Kikuyu, and she's also an author and pastor. We were also joined by Duncan and Kendi Juma, who have an intercultural marriage, and of course Liz and Solomon Ocampo from an interracial marriage. Thank you for being candid on your journey, and also thank you for being so candid about your experiences around this conversation. And we still have a lot more of your comments coming through. We have Gideon Felix, who says, I'm a hybrid, Luo and Luya. It's a beautiful thing, but with its own challenges, especially when it comes to having sense of identity or belonging. Thank you, Gideon. That has been touched on. We have Pastor Job at Nandwa, who says this is a big problem, especially where parents expect you to marry from a certain tribe. We hear you, Pastor. Dennis Odur says, I married a South Sudanese. Wa? Niliona shida sana, Dennis. Kuliendaje, jamini? Tell us more. That conversation continues on that hashtag new normal. Well, we take a break on your world. When we come back, something is happening from Wednesday, and that is St. Mary's School is celebrating 50 years of staging amazing musicals. And this year they have another amazing musical called In the Heights. Find out all about it in a moment. Thank you for staying with Your World. My name is Gladys Gashanje, and now we shift gears into the thespian world. Now, this year, St. Mary's School is celebrating 50 years of staging amazing musicals. And actually, this year, starting from Wednesday, they are staging In the Heights, the Tony-winning Best Musical about home, family, and finding belonging. And to tell us more about this, we have Jackie Kasuku, who is a theatre and language teacher at St. Mary's School. Thank you for your time. And we are also joined by Tinashe Mpariwa, who is an international Baccalaureate Diploma student at St. Mary's School. Thank you for being part of this conversation. So, Teacher Kasuku, we say it's been 50 years of staging amazing musicals. Tell us about the journey and what has made St. Mary's stand out from the crowd.
Okay, thank you very much, Gladys, for having us. It's quite a pleasure to be in the studios of NTV. The musical is a very unique genre of theatre, and you find that unlike straight plays, we tell our stories through music and dance. And yes, indeed, we have got some time where plays have got, what can we say, plays have got music, but this time St. Mary's is known for that staging of musicals.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And why did you decide to go that way as opposed to just staging straight plays, as you call them?
Actually, I found it being done.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I found it being done. In fact, like you quite rightly say, they began doing it way before I was born. So I could not, I mean, being inducted into the culture of St. Mary's, I found myself also growing into it. It grew onto me, and it's something I love doing. Theatre, music, musicals are just unique and they're good, yeah.
Okay, and what's your background in this?
I studied language and literature at the university, and within that I also did drama and theatre. Then I come to St. Mary's School, and with the, like you say, Tinashe is doing the International Baccalaureate Diploma program. We've got a section where we do theatre arts, and I therefore teach theatre arts. Okay. And so that's how I find myself in the mix of it all.
All right. Okay. So even as we talk about musical theatre, let's have a taste of exactly what it is. Have a listen.
Silence, and action.
Check 1, 2, 3. Check 1, 2, 3. This is Benny on the dispatch. Yo, attention, yo, attention. It's Benny, and I'd like to mention I'm on the microphone this morning. Honk your horn if you want it. Okay, we got traffic on the west side. Get off the 79, we'll take the left side. Riverside Drive, you might stop. West End's your best friend.
So a snippet of what happens at the St. Mary's School. And Tinashe, this is a snippet from which musical exactly?
Yeah, so it's the musical we're doing in the Heights. So, yeah, so that was like a scene from, it's called Benny's Dispatch. There's a scene where he's not Dominican, in a community where everyone's Dominican, and he's come into the dispatch as an American, and his friend has come over, and you know they're singing, they kind of like each other, so that's basically what's going on there.
So perhaps at this point you can tell us more about In the Heights that you're staging from this Wednesday. What is it all about?
Well, so it's basically about a community of Dominicans, or like people from the Dominican Republic, and they've come into like a neighborhood in New York in America, and they're going through a lot of like troubles to do with like financial troubles, and like but throughout the play, throughout the course, they learn that together they can like overcome all these struggles, and it's like where they are, the community is where home is at. That's where the heart is. So that's basically what the play is about.
All right. Now, before you tell us more about this, there's somebody who is asking, what is a baccalaureate diploma?
Well, it's the course we're doing, so it's basically, I don't know, it's a very good course. It's really, you know how most courses with just, you know, the academics and what you learn, like maths, English, like all the other subjects. Well, IB, we call it IB. It touches on other aspects, you know, how you learn, like the concepts of learning, and like learning creativity, activities, and like service while you're also learning. So like you're doing many other things while learning your academics. So it's not just academics solely, but other things as well.
Okay, perhaps Teacher Kasuku can give us more details.
Yeah. Okay, the International Baccalaureate program is it's an internationally recognized post-high school qualification that allows for children who have finished up their high school years. For example, in Kenya, you've done the 844. You finish your Form 4, you can come in for 2 years. Or you've done IGCSE, you do your year 11, and then you opt, instead of doing 12, 13 to do your A-levels, you decide now to take the International Baccalaureate program. Now, like I said, it's 2 years, and unlike other programs that are very, very academic oriented, IB goes further down the road, where we have got students being given 6 subjects. 6 subjects, 3 at higher level and 3 at subsidiary level. And therefore, before you get to university, you're able to also still try chart your way out. And like Tinashe says, we've got the core of the IB program is the extended essay. We have got the extended essay I've said, then we've got the theory of knowledge, and we have got CAS, which is creativity, activity, and service. If you try and look at our current new program that we are trying out as a country, it's leaning a lot towards that direction. In fact, I remember listening to the newly appointed CAS, Dr. Ruto, who is my very good teacher from college, by the way. When they were trying to explain to us as a country what exactly is going to be the difference between our 844, as we know it, and the CBC, and she talked about, you know, people learning, kids being able to learn outside of school, and that's what the IB program does with creativity, activity, and service. These kids are able to, we form character in that aspect. Then theory of knowledge, we question how we learn. And it's not just Mrs. Kasuku came to class and she said 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Yeah. You question how you learn in various areas, in the arts, in the sciences. We don't acquire knowledge the same way. Then we have got the extended essay where we introduce research skills to kids. And I'll remember one of my former students who actually told me, Ms. Kasuku, I can actually do referencing. My brother who is at the university can't do it. She was very grateful. So that's what the IB program is. It's a 2-year post-secondary school program that actually enables kids to prepare extremely well for university, not just in Kenya, by the way, because Kenyan universities also take us. Yeah, and St. Mary's has been doing this since 1983.
Okay.
We were the first school in the country to take it on.
All right. Yeah. Interesting. So, Tinashe, back to you and to the thespian world. You are the lead actor for the drama club at St. Mary's, and you clearly are part of this production that we'll be seeing staged from Wednesday in the Heights. So, which role are you playing, and is there something that you can give us a tidbit about?
Okay, so like I said, it's a group of Dominicans. So his name is Usnavi. His parents immigrated from the Dominican Republic, and he's like a shopkeeper in the area. He's kind of like the glue that holds the community together. So later on in the show, he decides he wants to leave and go back to his community, like back to the DR, Dominican Republic, and but through a series of events, he realizes that you know, home is best and like where he's grown up. So he decides to stay.
So is that the role you play?
Yeah, that's the role I play.
Okay, so is there a part where you can actually just give us a snippet of what to expect?
Okay. I am Usnavi, and you probably never heard my name. Reports of my fame are greatly exaggerated, exacerbated by the fact that my syntax is highly complicated because I immigrated from the single greatest little place in the Caribbean, Dominican Republic. I love it. Just I'm jealous of it. And beyond that, ever since my folks passed on, I haven't gone back. God damn, I gotta get on that.
Aha. All right. Now, what I'm hearing, this is a lot of, okay, where is it staged from which century, and have we modernized it to actually fit today's kind of, you know, music? Because I hear a lot of rap in the Teacher Kasuku.
Yes. It's very, very current. Actually, the writer Lin-Manuel Miranda, by the way, he's the guy who wrote Hamilton. Hamilton was, until before COVID, was one of the greatest running musicals on Broadway. By the way, you can't get tickets for the next very long time. So the music is very, very current, very like you've heard him. That's rap. There's a lot of salsa because it is Latino, it's Latin based. Yeah, but very, very interesting lyrics. And Lin-Manuel Miranda is very big on that. His music is just amazing. So you'll have a lot of rap, there'll be some Yeah, we talk about salsa, South American music, lyrics and beats. Yeah.
Okay, so we expected a lot of salsa dancing.
Or you probably stand up and dance if you come.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. So notable alumni like Oscar Award winner Lupita Nyong'o has actually been in the school, and even His Excellency the President has also played a part in all this. Why would you say that drama club or at St. Mary's has stood on its own 2 feet, and which are other alumni that you can speak of?
There are many. There are many. There are many. I remember sitting down and trying to think, who will I mention, who will I not mention before I get a call and I'm asked, why didn't you mention me? We've got so many. Other than Lupita, who's like our most notable one, having represented, and you know, she is now a national figure with her achievement. It's not a mean feat, by the way, to find yourself on that kind of stage. We have got the likes of a good number of the people who you people feature on TV, by the way. I see that's Chao Motela. She was in St. Mary's, she did theatre arts. I've seen there was Charles Souda. He's currently at the Lee Strasberg School in New York, still plying his trade in theatre. Jeff acted on that stage, Koinange. We have got Chris Kamau, Eric Wainaina. I will not go on, I'll stop there.
Clearly the list is long. Now, Tinashe, to hear such superstars that have gone ahead of you and now you're filling their shoes, how is that experience for you, and where do you see yourself in the future?
I mean, it's an honor to be at a school where you know, many of these great people who she's mentioned have been, and you know, it's inspiring, you know, to know that, you know, that the teachers, you know, mold us to become the people that, you know, like influential people, like she said. So, well, initially I wasn't really looking into arts and like acting, but now that I've gotten into it, like I wouldn't mind. Like actually, it's really interesting. I wouldn't mind taking a part and like following this direction. Really, yeah.
Okay, so you say you never thought that you would actually land here. So what is this that you do on the side that is complemented now by the arts?
Well, I enjoy playing basketball. I love software engineering, computing, and yeah. So the funny story is, initially, when I got there, I just got there to watch, like solely. I just came to watch them audition and stuff. Then, yeah, then I landed the role as the main actor.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, here you are, and definitely putting up this amazing musical starting from Wednesday. Perhaps if you can have the poster so that people can understand when this is happening, what time does it start, and what can we expect, and for how many days?
Okay, we have our open show starting Wednesday, 5:30. I believe both of us are very well aware of the fact that when COVID happened, our lives came to a standstill for a bit of time. But as time has gone by, we are trying to get our way around it and live with it in the most reasonable and safe way as possible. So we will be having 300 people. The first 300 people who come in will get the tickets. We've reduced our seating capacity. We are asking people to come in at 5:30 so that we also take our, we go through the sequence of COVID protocols and all that to make sure that people are comfortable about where they're going. Then the show runs for about 2 hours. And because of curfew, we also want the show to end very early. On normal days, by day, would begin at about 6 o'clock and would be out of that place by around 9, 10, depending on the length of the shows. But because of the current situation with the curfew, we want to finish early so that people are able to get home in good time. Yep, so we begin on Wednesday. We have our open show in the evening, 5:30. Thursday, we also have our second show. Then Friday, we have our second show, which is also our third show, which is an evening show. Saturday, we have 2 shows, specifically because the matinee show, which is the afternoon show, we keep it as a family show for people who will not have been able to come during the week. We are welcoming all Kenyans. All of you out there, please do come, support the young people. Just come and have a good day out, really. It's one of those things you probably want to see what is different, what has been going on that was going on before, and we're trying to get back to our sense of normalcy in this, a new dispensation, if I can call it that. Yeah, so Saturday we have our afternoon show at 1 o'clock, and then we have the finale at 5:30 on Saturday, and we call it our 50th musical. Our 50th year of musicals. Yeah.
So it is an anniversary.
Yeah,
okay, so Tinashe, you are young, getting into this, doing well for yourself to be the lead in this drama club. What else can you expect, and how can you encourage other young ones who are looking into musical theatre?
Well, I feel like it's very interesting. Like, I didn't think I'd enjoy it this much, and you grow as a person, as an actor, as a singer as well, since it's a musical, and it's really, like, I encourage more people to take it, like, take risks, do things you never see yourself doing, like the cast, we've grown so much, like, majority of us didn't even know we could act or sing, and yeah, we've grown as a cast, and I think I'd encourage more people to take part and, like, to act. It's very interesting. Yeah,
okay, and as a person, you love this, but you have parents who probably were thinking, are you sure this is something you want to do? Is this why we sent you to school?
Yeah, I mean, well, they weren't really skeptical, but eventually, now it's like every day they know, okay, Tinashe is going to come on, he's doing the dishes, he's going to be singing. Like, it's the only music we listen to in the house at this point, but they've been very, they've been with me throughout, like, all this, getting home late, going through practice. But they've learned, they can't wait to come and watch us. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So looking forward to The Heights that's being staged this week at the St. Mary's School. As we said, it is actually about home, family, and finding belonging. And Teacher Kasuku, even as we bring this conversation to a close, as we said, musical theatre is not very common, but it's a very beautiful piece of art staged every year at St. Mary's School. Your encouragement to other thespians who haven't perhaps embraced this kind of theatre?
My word to all those people who have not embraced it is, like Tinashe says, take the risk. Just try and venture into it, and you realize it's really good, because unlike straight plays, you've got different aspects of the arts that come in. You've got music, you've got dance. By the way, they are very great, amazing dances, you guys. People are going to really, really enjoy those dances. Like I said, you probably find yourself standing up to dance. But maybe if you just allow me, Gladys, to say that in The Heights, like we've said, it's about home, it's about identity, it's about who am I, where am I best, where do I feel most comfortable. It's not a situation that's strange to us in this republic, by the way. Many a times, and especially now, sometimes you find a lot of people questioning, where am I, who am I, where am I going? And like I think when we got onto set, just even from the conversation that was there in the segment that was before this, where people try to find themselves because of where you are. Is that home, or is it where you come from, back home? And sometimes home is just where you're happiest and where everybody around you makes sense to you at that point in time. And it's actually possible to have different homes. You can be at home here in Kenya. Tinashe, when he goes to Zimbabwe, he'll be because he's Zimbabwean.
Yes, yeah.
He can go home, he'll still be comfortable. So you have the best of the worlds where you are at. So we want to encourage Kenyans to know that home is really where you are at. And not necessarily because you speak the language there, you're from that culture, but because just live within the borders of this country.
Yes. Interesting. Again, that is In the Heights, the Tony-winning Best Musical about home and family and finding belonging, that will be staged from Wednesday all through to Saturday at the St. Mary's School. Remember, they are celebrating 50 years of staging amazing musicals. Well, Jackie Kasuku, theatre and language teacher, St. Mary's School, and of course Tinashe Mpariwa, who is an international baccalaureate diploma student at St. Mary's School. Thank you for giving us a snippet of what to expect, and of course looking forward to this amazing musical theatre performance. Thank you for being part of your world. Tomorrow we shall be back and we'll be looking at something that most people do not understand but want to take part in. We're talking about cosmetic surgery. Oh yes, we've had a lot of you asking if this is possible in the country, and if it is, do we have legit surgeons who do this, and what are the pros and cons? Where we will have surgeons in studio, and of course doctors who will be giving us a bit of an idea as to this world, and of course what you can expect and what works and what doesn't work. For all your questions, join us then.